Hey everybody, welcome back. This is the Audit Cast. This is going to be an episode about how to get a higher rating at your job. So if that's a CPA firm or any kind of accounting firm, this is a good one to listen to. I put together some tips and tricks and some actionable real life things you can do, not just general concepts to apply to your work, but actual things you can do to increase that rating. So just a quick thing. Sorry for the quality of my voice today. I kind of lost it this weekend through a couple different things. I had about a 2.5 hour conversation with somebody where I spent a lot of time talking, and then I'm a little sick, and then I capped that conversational night off with a little bit of guitar playing and singing. So did some damage, I think. Anyways, so you'll hear me crack and break and sound a little different from usual, but that's all right. The information's still going to be there. So without further ado, let's jump right into this. Again, this is some of the ways that you can better your rating or improve your chances to get a better rating at the end of the year or however often your performance year would be. Sometimes that's 3 months, 6 months, a year. But yeah, so starting with the first one, I guess a little bit of background. Let me back up. Apologies. Usually what I've seen through jobs I've had and conversations with folks is that ratings, like a final rating where it'll be used to determine compensation or eligibility for promotion or whatever, typically is a culmination of a series of other ratings on individual projects. So like in auditing, it's pretty simple, right? We have individual audits and you get rated on either the whole audit or phases of that audit. And then your year-end rating is going to be a culmination of that, along with some other noise that you might have done throughout the year, if it's recruiting or some kind of extracurriculars within your company, so on and so forth. But that's kind of the idea. That's the background. So the first one I have for you guys is to just ask your superior, ask your senior, your manager, the staff above you, whoever that is, ask them what you need to do in order to get the next rating. Like, let them know this is something that you want to do and you're willing to put in the work and the effort to do so. That is a really, really valuable tool, is just to ask what that person expects of you on each individual job or week by week, or however your performance ratings are broken up. But it is a little bit uncomfortable at first to ask for these kinds of things, to have these conversations, because you kind of have to pull somebody aside and say, hey, it is a little vulnerable saying, hey, I want to be better. I want to be better than average. And what do I need to do that? But while it is hard, you need to remember that in itself kind of separates you a little bit from the pack. Now, that's not all you need to do. That won't get you there. But you need to ask, and then if they provide valuable information, great. Sometimes people when put on the spot or because of just the way they think, don't necessarily give you actionable information. So you need to kind of probe and ask, like, what specific things can I do? What do you see in a top rated person? Or what am I doing that I need to implement a little bit of changes to so that I can get to that next level? And it's such a valuable tool. And I feel like that one's a little bit more common. You've probably heard that. Nothing new there, but it's always a good reminder to just ask. So let that sink in and really, really do it. Go to your senior and just ask them, what do you need to do? Excuse me. So the next one is, and this is really important, you don't want to be sensitive or overly sensitive to critical feedback or critical construction. For you to get a higher rating or for you to grow at all, you really need to be accepting of and neutral to getting feedback, whether that's good or bad, because everybody's going to have great feedback and everybody's going to have some tougher feedback they don't want to hear. But I've worked with people before that it's a challenge to give them critical feedback because of their either the anticipated response that I have from them or the actual response that I've gotten from them. So just it's up to you to actively create that open dialogue and create the reputation of, hey, this is a person. You want your superiors, your seniors, your managers, and so on and so forth. You want to create a reputation to them that says, hey, John Doe or Jane Doe is awesome because I can tell them little things to work on, like serious critical feedback, and I can give that to them without worrying about just it being uncomfortable or having it being a weird conversation or anything like that. So with that being said, really try to apply that. Let the actionable item there is when you're in a position to ask for feedback, let the person know, like, be very honest, say, look, I know I will have constructive feedback, and I know there's probably some things that I could do much better. So I give you full permission to list those out in non-sugar-coated ways or however you want to say that, but something, that message, something to that effect, because that will really help. That puts the guard down, and it really allows an open dialogue with you and the person above you. It allows you to also, or it gives you guys kind of a connection, because that in itself almost breaks the ice a little bit. So, excuse me, the really the best thing you can do for or in your endeavor to get information from the people above you, critical and timely feedback, is to constantly be asking for it and be open to receiving it. And so those are challenges because like I said in the first one, it's uncomfortable to ask for feedback, or it's uncomfortable to ask what you can do better or how to get to the next level. And it's also, sometimes it's uncomfortable to hear it, but you have to train yourself to be accepting of it. And if you're the type of person that hears feedback and kind of gets a little upset at first, like maybe somebody tells you I'm trying to think of something simple. You're using different fonts in your work papers or something, and you think that's dumb, and you're like, that's a waste of time to even have that feedback point. Like, I understand, and you need to understand yourself and how you respond to these feedback items. And so if that's the type of person you are that might have a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction or overreaction, then I think your best thing you can do there is just try to internalize when you get feedback and try to just keep your mouth shut when you get some critical feedback. You can keep your mouth shut, hear it, sleep on it, wait 10 minutes, whatever. Just let it digest, and then maybe share your point if you think it's nonsensical or whatever. But don't respond in the moment if it's heating you up, because a level head will definitely help you out in these types of conversations and really just in the business world in general. So, what is next? Let's see here. I'll try to limit the use of my monotone, sick voice right now and my sniffles. I'm sorry, guys. The information I feel like is great here, but I will try to spice it up a little bit here, liven myself up. So we've got through critical feedback. We've got through just another piece on the critical feedback. Like I said, create that reputation where people think or know they can go to you, but also allow them to feel like they can teach you, because there's no better guide to navigating this world, this public accounting world, than kind of getting taken under the wing by some really good folks. So if you have some people that you see that do well, or high performers, or work the way you would like to work, try to learn from them and actively learn from them, and people will take you under their wing. It's really a big part of this job. People like to teach, so be somebody that people can teach. Another easy one is just try to show up first. Try to be the first one there. or try to be one of the first ones there. And if you can, be the last one to leave. But I think being the first one there is more important than being the last one to leave. There's just something people have about early risers, and I don't know what it is, but the perception of early risers is always a good one. So try to be the first one there as much as you can, and be cognizant of how often you're the first one to either arrive or to leave, because other people will be too. So try to keep an inventory. Excuse me. Try to keep an inventory of your own attendance levels and when you arrive and when you leave compared to everybody else. You'll start to notice patterns and things that maybe you didn't notice, and that will help. So let's see, what do we have up next here? Here's an easy one. Be friendly. Be friendly to people. Listen. Actively listen to your peers, to your seniors, so on and so forth. Don't jump to trying to talk over them or tell them about your awesome story. But also, in the opposite of that, don't be overly friendly on the job. Not in a, I don't mean that in a bad way, but don't be overly talkative and focusing solely on building, the relationship with your team, because there's a value similar to those folks that arrive early. There's also another perception for people that can just put their head down and work for 4 hours at a time or 8 hours at a time or whatever. So try to focus on, during some pieces, some portion of your day or a couple days a week or whatever, where you really actively limit the amount of talking you do, and don't be an asshole to people and don't blow people off. But if you can kind of show and build a little reputation of, Jane or Joe, whatever, they're hard workers. They don't pick their head up and start goofing off, or they're not sitting at their computer or whatever. That'll really help the perception of how well you're doing, and kind of the benefit of that when you might be thinking right now, you're like, well, high performers should also be actually, in fact, performing better and not just, giving the perception that they're performing better. Well, if you're doing things like this and you're applying these tips, inherently your work's going to improve, because if you focus for 4 hours at a time and actually work for 4 hours straight rather than 25 minutes, 35 minutes with a break and a chat break and whatever, then you actually will do better work. It's just the way it's kind of a cause and effect. So so take that one on. What else do we have here? Here's one that I've tried to adopt recently because I think it's a valuable tool. So I don't have any proof for this one. I haven't seen how it's affected perceptions or ratings or anything, but I feel like it's a valuable tool that I've kind of adopted. And so I'm going to share it with you guys. In slow times, like when you're an interim or planning or a quarter or a time when you're not expected to work horrendous hours, take a day a week, like assign a day a week where you're going to just stay a little bit later and either work a little more, or if you have too tight of a budget and you can't hit the code, or there's not any work to do or whatever, stay and just like do a training. Just take an extra hour or two a day where you stay till 6 or 7 instead of 5:30 or whatever, and do something to invest in your career. That could be as simple as just putting another hour in on your job, on the project you're working on. Or like I said, a training. A lot of companies out there have just free trainings you can work on. Do something, because it will help. In theory, it would help perception, but it also allows you to get a chance to wrap up when there's no other distractions, when everybody else is gone and nobody's asking you questions or sending you emails or asking you to join a meeting or do something. You can actually focus pretty well and kind of catch up on some of the little things that you might have been putting off till tomorrow. So that's a good one that I really like. Here's kind of a documentation tip. And if you guys follow me on Twitter, you might see some of these. You can find us at The Audit Cast on Twitter, or Facebook, which is facebook.com/The Audit Cast. A documentation couple of tools, or I don't know what to call them. A couple of things I've been trying to incorporate into my documentation over the last year, which has helped, is this idea that I'm patronizing my reviewer. Like, I'm writing as if my reviewer is kind of an idiot. Like, and I don't mean that they are, and it's nothing to do with that, but write as if you didn't have the conversation with your reviewer earlier about, the company's fixed asset policies, and they, write it as if they haven't seen their cash recon before, or whatever it is. So if you have to write a tick mark or document a company's policy, or just give a little background before you start your testing or during your testing, try to be a little more long-winded, not to the point where you're blowing the budget and going crazy, but really patronize. Like, that's what I try to do, so that I overemphasize my documentation. And then when I'm going through back through review, it's much easier critically to do a critical review and remove stuff than it is to kind of start over or add in more later. And that kind of brings me to my next one. When you're doing your critical review, especially of documentation, of writing, essentially, you might find that the way your thoughts came out were kind of in a weird chronological order. If you're trying to explain an event, you might have put the end result first and then gone back and kind of put the background afterwards, or what led up to that event afterwards. If you did that, that's fine for your first draft, but it really doesn't take much more time to go back and rearrange that paragraph or sentence you wrote. So it's really useful to sometimes just go back and rewrite a tick mark or a piece of documentation that you wrote, because it will make so much more sense to your reviewer. And that leads right into my next one. Who is your reviewer? And you're probably thinking about this all the time. It's probably a senior or a manager, or maybe even a partner or whatever. And obviously it goes through all those levels eventually. But a lot of people write as if they're writing to the next person in line. So if you're a staff, you might be writing your documentation with the attitude that your audience is your senior, because they're the next ones looking at it. But try to change that mentality. Try to change your mentality and think of your audience not as the next guy, not even as the next guy after that, but think of it as your partner in your firm, or an internal reviewer from your firm, or a peer reviewer from another firm. Or personally, what I like to do the most is write as if I'm writing to a PCAOB inspector, because that's who would ultimately be looking at your work. In the longest, the most drawn out example, or the most hypothetical example, they're the ones who are going to be reading your tick marks and memos and documentation and things like that. So write it as if they're going to be reading it, because that will save, it'll change a little bit of your documentation, make it a little bit better. But also in a practical sense, if your job ever gets selected for some kind of review, then it, how do I explain? It saves you a conversation later. It saves you having to explain what you wrote later if your documentation can speak for itself. So that's a really big one. So just remember, change who your audience is. Think of your audience as the highest guy in the food chain. So the next one, chronic complaints. Try to take an inventory of things you complain about or talk about frequently, or just might have any tone of negativity, and make sure that you're not creating a pattern of chronic complaints, because people pick up on that. If you're the person who's always complaining about the commute, or having to stay late, or missing your family, or had to do too many inventory counts or whatever, that gets picked up on, and it's such a tough one, because public accounting, the industry, that is an issue. All these things are issues. All the complaints we have are issues in the firms and in the industry. But the people you're complaining to, especially if they're higher up, have all been there too. They've all been in your shoes. They've put in their time, and they've done the 30 inventory counts in a year, and they've done the
every day on site, travel, every day on site out of town. They've done all that stuff. So keep that in mind and watch. Just try to be cognizant of what you're complaining or talking about, or what negativity you bring, and that should help. And then just again, to kind of wrap it around to the beginning again, just let people know that you're willing to do what it takes to get better, and be humble in that. Don't think you're a rock star. Even if you start becoming a rock star, there's always more you can do. You can always be better. If you're a second year staff that could be promoted to senior, that's great. So then you should become senior, but then you need to start thinking about the next level, and don't let it get over your head, because everybody has some fallacies. Everybody has some things they can work on. So with that, that's it, guys. So I hope you enjoyed this one. If you have any questions, you can write them out on our forum. It's an anonymous forum at our website, theauditcast.com. I'll say that again, theauditcast.com. And it's on the forum page or open discussion page. I forgot what it is. Pretty easy to find. Our website's not complicated. You can hit us up on Twitter at theauditcast and ask us questions that way. You can go to facebook.com/theauditcast. There's a lot of ways to ask us questions. So, and there's also a lot of good information on our website. I put the notes to these podcasts up there. I have some other tips, some short stuff that I've just stuck on there, and then some other fun stuff. I want to thank Shout Engine for hosting this podcast. Thank you, Shout Engine. They're great. If you guys are thinking of starting your own podcast, then go to Shout Engine. And also, excuse me, please review and rate us on iTunes or whatever platform you're listening to this on. That really helps, because just like I told you guys earlier, I want feedback. I want good, honest, critical feedback. And I want you guys to tell me what I can do better to make this more useful for you, because that's the whole goal of this. I'm doing this for people in public accounting that are either in college wanting to get into public accounting, or people who are already in it. And all I want to do is help. So if I'm not getting feedback, then I assume that I must not be doing anything wrong, and I know that's not the case. So please give feedback, rate, review, let me know. Let me know what else you guys want. If you have any more topics you want covered or whatever, if you want any guests on, so on and so forth. So with that, have a good one. Get back to work, or enjoy your commute or the plane flight or whatever you guys are doing. All right. Thanks a lot. Bye.